So thank you so much for this opportunity. Good to see you on TV Rain. First of all, I would ask you about the war in Ukraine, which is very important, obviously, and a lot depends on it. So Chuck Schumer said that if the Republicans and Democrats do not agree, then Ukraine has a month, and then the advantage will be on the Russian side. So is the administration ready for a compromise with Republicans? What's your forecast on that?
Look, I think there's broad consensus here in Washington on the importance of Ukraine, on the importance of American support for Ukraine, and we're confident that in the end that this will come through as the president has requested. Do
you have any timing frames?
I mean, I can't give you the exact timing, of course, because it's a political matter on the Hill here. But we do know that there's broad bipartisan support for this, and so at the end of the day, we feel that this will come to fruition.
All right, but when the big invasion has started, the U.S. and other allies of Ukraine kept saying, we will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, and so on and so forth. And then we have heard the statements saying that the help to Ukraine will be smaller than it was in 2022, 2023. So I hear you when you're saying that the support, bipartisan support is still big. But I have a feeling that something has changed, and a lot of experts have the same feeling. Is there a fatigue in the White House?
No, there's not a fatigue, and I think that this is a question. There's an important question of principle that's at stake here, and as I said, there's broad consensus on the importance of the United States standing up for those principles, as we have since the beginning of this conflict. And I would note too that we continue to provide assistance to Ukraine. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if we talk about the prospects of 2024, President Zelensky has mentioned that there was no signals coming from the West about the freezing of the conflict, about the negotiations with Russia. But still, we are seeing the publications in the Western press, including New York Times. And the recent publication said that Putin conveyed through diplomatic channels his readiness for negotiations. Is that so?
Well, look, we've been very clear from the beginning that this is about Ukraine, and at the end of the day, of course, most wars, I would say almost all wars, end at some point at the negotiating table. I think everybody recognizes that, but it's going to be up to Ukraine to decide when they're ready to sit down. And again, the principles that we've supported here, there has to be, at the end of the day, there has to be a just and sustainable peace that upholds the principles of the UN Charter, the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity of states.
I got it, but Vladimir Putin just recently said that the goals of this so-called special military operation are the same: demilitarization, denazification. It means that he still thinks about aims for himself, the changing of the government in Ukraine as minimum, and maybe occupation of the whole country as maximum. We can see that he is not changing, despite the signals that New York Times has got or whatever. So if there are negotiations, Moscow is not ready to do what you are talking about, recognizing the sovereignty, the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and so on and so forth. Is there a chance that Ukraine needs to agree with the situation that Kyiv doesn't like?
Look, we're committed to supporting Ukraine, and the president has said many times that we're committed to supporting Ukraine to resist Russian aggression and to help Ukraine end up in the strongest possible place that it can be. So we're continuing on that effort. We'll continue to support them. We'll continue to have their backs. And it'll be up to Ukraine and the government of Ukraine to decide eventually when and if they wish to sit down with Russia, and of course, ultimately to decide the terms of that. The United States is not going to force some sort of unjust settlement on Ukraine or do anything behind Ukraine's back.
I'm not a military expert, but still, I can see that the situation on the ground in Ukraine can change if Ukraine gets the weaponry that the country needs. And it's not getting what it needs, obviously. Long-range systems and other things that are important, crucial in this war. So do you think that Kyiv will get what it is demanding during this last months? What's your take on that?
Look, we've worked very closely with Kyiv since the beginning of the war, and of course, this is something that has changed and it has adapted over time. But the United States has provided an unprecedented level of support, military support to Ukraine, as have many of our partners and allies, and we expect that to continue. And we expect that Ukraine will receive the type of support that enables it to continue to resist Russian aggression.
But specifically what they are asking for, you don't have an answer.
Well, look, as I said, this has evolved over time, and you've seen different systems that have been provided, and so I think this kind of adaptation will continue as this goes forward.
So the 2024, Nicholas, is a crucial year. If you agree with me, I don't know. We are looking forward to the elections in the U.S. There is going to be kind of elections in Russia, and it's kind of a vulnerable period of time. Do you think that during this 2024, the war can end in Ukraine? Do you see this coming?
Look, as has been the case since the start of this, really, there's one person that could end this war tomorrow if he so desired, and that's President Putin. Russia initiated this war, and Russia could also end this war. Of course, we've called on Russia to end this war. I can't make predictions about what will happen, obviously, but I can tell you, and I have told you, what U.S. policy is, and that's what we're going to continue to do. I think an just and sustainable end to this war, again, that upholds the principles of the UN Charter, that would be in everybody's interest.
As I mentioned, there are elections, presidential elections in Russia in March of 2024. Will the U.S. recognize its legitimacy? Nicholas, what do you think about that?
Look, it's not to us to decide Russia's political direction. That's for Russians to decide. So we don't have a say in that, and Russians will have to make their own choices.
Russians don't
about their own leadership. It's simply not for us to choose.
But Russians don't have choices, unfortunately, obviously, as you know.
Well, the principles that the United States has supported in terms of democratic processes worldwide, we've done that for a long time. We've been very consistent in speaking up for those principles. Of course, this president has also been very vocal in speaking up for democratic principles. But with regard to the political process in Russia, that is for the Russians to manage, and it's their choice ultimately.
So after these elections, we can imagine that there could be kind of negotiations or meetings with Vladimir Putin, and he would be a president of Russian Federation for the U.S. officially.
Look, the United States does not pick the president of the Russian Federation, so that's for the Russians to decide, and that's for the Russian system.
So, as I understand, the contacts between Moscow and Washington are still there, and Vladimir Putin, on his press conference on December 14th, has mentioned that there are kind of talks about Evan Gershkovich, the journalist who is detained in Russia. And what is the state of this case right now? Is there a deal coming soon? What would you say about Evan's future? When is he going to be home?
Look, I obviously can't get into details of this, but we have made an offer to the Russian side on this, not only for Evan, but also for Paul Whelan,
yes,
who was also wrongfully detained in Russia. And of course, we call on the Russians to release them immediately, along with others who are wrongfully detained. But this is an ongoing discussion, and obviously, it's an important issue for us. It's an important issue for this president, and we'll continue. This administration will continue to do everything that we can to get these Americans home.
Did you get any answer from Russian side? on your offer?
Look, as I said, I'm not at liberty to get into the.
Of course, but I'm a journalist.
These are sensitive issues.
Absolutely.
But as I said, we continue. We will spare no effort to bring these people home, and we continue to look for ways that we can do that.
Of course, and we all appreciate that. The final question I would like to ask you about, we have mentioned American prisoners wrongfully detained, as you said, in Russia, but there are so many political prisoners in Russian Federation, Russian citizens, including Alexei Navalny, Ilya Yashin, Vladimir Kara-Murza, and others. So is Washington interested, and is Washington doing something, any efforts for getting these people out of Russian prison? Can you say anything about them?
So look, by all means, we're interested in seeing political prisoners released. And again, this is a longstanding policy and principle of the United States. And, you can go back even to the Soviet period. And this was a big part of our advocacy and our diplomacy at the time with the Soviet Union. We continue to advocate for political prisoners and for their release. These people should be released. So we will not give up on that, and we won't stay silent on that.
Do you think that the Russian-American relations can improve somehow in coming months during 2024? I mean, how do you see the state of Russian-American relations?
Well, look, clearly Russian-American relations are at a low point and quite strained. And this is largely, although not exclusively, due to the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. So to the extent that we can resolve this, that Russia agrees to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, that would obviously go a significant way to helping us perhaps restore some elements of our relationship. There are other things that we also have deep disagreements about that predate that. But, I think looking over the longer term, it's important to recognize that, these are disagreements between states, that at the end of the day, we've never had any animus or hostility towards Russia or the Russian people. And I think that's important to keep in mind, and that there's still people-to-people ties between the United States and Russia. And so I think we can all hope for one day when circumstances are going to permit us to have a better relationship. When that's going to be, obviously, I couldn't tell you.
Thank you very much for this conversation, and we really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, my pleasure.
Pleasure is mine.
We operated in Russia for 12 years, and the government tried to get rid of us 3 times.
We had to leave, forced out of the country by new repressive laws after the first week of the war. Our freedom crushed by the authorities.
Мы временно приостанавливаем работу телеканала.
We survived, started working from Europe, and now we are watched by millions of people every day.
There's no other independent news channel in Russian. We have now decided to tell the truth about Russia in English as well.
So that you could get news about Russia, the war in Ukraine, and Russian society directly from the source.
We want to tell you firsthand what is really happening in Russia. Subscribe to TVRain Newsroom on YouTube, and let's take a look at our future together.